What's good, everybody? I'm the G with a PhD, and you're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel, the place where Black men can express themselves freely, straight up, no chaser. Hit the share, the like, and the subscribe buttons, and we're going to get this ball rolling. I'm going to give some time, though. Hit the share, the like, and the subscribe buttons, and we're going to get this little technical difficulty right there. But we're about to get this ball rolling. I'm gonna give some time for some people to matriculate into the stream, and then I'll get started. What's good, Adam? How you doing, brother? So I'm just giving it some time. I'm gonna give it about a minute or two. I'm gonna post a link in the chat just in case anybody wants to join in and express their opinions. So I got NJ Progressive India up in the joint, round 2. Universal 178, Michael Caviness, what's good, y'all? Again, I'm just allowing some time for people to matriculate into the cast. Force Windu, what's good, y'all? So, Meanies, what's good? So, before I get started, though, and before I allow other interlocutors into the conversation, I am going to say some things to begin with, some preliminary remarks. But yet, I'm still going to allow some time for people to matriculate into the cast.
Van Dam.
What's good, Marcus?
Yeah. Yo, what's going on? We live?
Yeah, we live right now, bro.
Okay. What's going on? I'm just now coming in, so anything that you might have said before now, I have not heard.
Well, I haven't said anything at all. I've been waiting for your presence here. So
no doubt.
Before I begin, though, I want to make some preliminary remarks. Again, I want to kind of go over and let the audience know precisely what Pan Africanism is. Okay? And after that, I think today what I'm going to do is, like you provided some videos for me, I provided some videos for you. So we're going to peruse those videos and try to provide some context related to the conversation. You got a little bit of background noise going on there, so
let me see if I can get somewhere that's quiet, because there's somebody downstairs doing some work. So let me go. You know what? Let me go down there, and hopefully I can get some quiet. Hold on, I'm gonna mute my mic for a second. So continue.
While you're doing that, I will provide the audience some context. So first of all, I want to again go over what Pan Africanism actually is. Okay, so Pan Africanism basically is a worldwide movement that aims to encourage and strengthen bonds of solidarity between all indigenous and diaspora ethnic groups of African descent. So it's based on a common goal going back to the Atlantic slave trade. And the movement extends beyond continental Africans, with a substantial support base among the African diaspora in the Americas and in Europe and in the Caribbean, which one could consider to be part, to some degree, of the Americas. Pan-Africanism can be said to have its origins in the struggles of African people against enslavement and colonization. And this struggle may be traced back to the first resistance on slave ships, rebellions, and suicides, through the constant plantation and colonial uprisings and the Back to Africa movements of the 19th century. We're talking about the 1800s here. It's also based on the belief that unity is vital to economic, social, and political progress. And it aims to unify and uplift people of African descent. So at its core, Pan-Africanism is a belief that African people, both on the continent and in the diaspora, share not merely a common history, but a common destiny. So it's not just backward looking, it's forward looking. It is an intellectual, a cultural, and a political movement. And it tends to view all Africans and descendants of Africans as belonging to the same race, and that they share, to some degree, some modicum of unity, cultural unity. So basically, Pan-Africanism posits a sense of shared historical fate for Africans in America, the West Indies, and on the continent itself, based on the Atlantic trade in slaves, African slavery, and European imperialism. So there's an organization that was once called the Organization of African Unity. It's now called the African Union. And it was established in 1963 to safeguard the sovereignty and territorial integrity of its member nation states and to promote global relations within the framework of the UN, the United Nations. So the UN has its seat in Addis Ababa, and the Pan-African Parliament has its seat in Johannesburg, which is in South Africa, and Midrand. Okay? So that's the context and the pretext of Pan-Africanism. Okay? Now, I don't know if you're back with me, Marcus. Are you back?
Yeah, I'm right here.
Okay, so that's the context of Pan-Africanism, okay? That's what it's about. It's about trying to foster unity. It's a backward-looking movement in relation to its espousing that people of African descent all throughout the world have a common history, and it's forward-looking insofar as it puts forth the notion that people of African descent have a forward-looking goal to fulfill, namely unity, such that all throughout the world, when they encounter racism, imperialism, that they can somehow form some means by which to suppress it. So there are some people who are skeptical of this. There's some people who are adherents of this ideal. And we're here to have a second round of discussions related to this issue. So, Brother Marcus, what would you like to say about this preliminarily?
I have nothing in conflict, as far as my feelings with what you said. Like it would be great if that could be achieved. If African Americans, Afro-Caribbeans and Africans, and the different nations on the continent could unite, under one banner. I mean, I think it would be a wonderful thing. Idealistically, and I'm gonna say that just to contextualize it. Like I think it could be a wonderful thing. That's not. I don't have no conflict with the way you just presented. The idea of Pan Africanism. So that's I want people to understand that part of it, like that. Is not something that as an ideology itself that I'm against. I'm not against the idea of all Black people coming together under one banner, under one, united front, political front, whatever. Not against that. I'm not against that idea.
Okay, we got another brother who here by the name of the nameless protagonist. I want to hear what he has to say about this, and I want him to chime in and get his perspective on it. There is one person I know in the chat who is exclaiming that there's low volume. So if none of you can hear, or if the volume is low for someone, could you please articulate which someone the volume is low for? Because I can hear everything just fine on my end. Can you hear me, Marcus?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, so I'm going to add the nameless protagonist to the stream and his take on this. Okay.
Okay.
Nameless protagonist, what's going on, brother?
Good afternoon, man. How you doing today, family?
How you doing, brother?
And I can't call it. This is a really good topic, Pan Africanism. I'll sum it up with just a direct premise and say that Marcus Garvey, in his book, The Thoughts and Opinions on Marcus Garvey, he really set a solid framework for the importance of it. And over 100 years ago, when a lot of those ideas were comprised and put together, he called out almost verbatim what would happen if we didn't take part in that global conversation and that global aggregation of power. That's really a lot of what I have to say. Most of the pro-Black movements you saw that happened after that stemmed from a lot of foundational work that Pan-African laid as an establishment. Even when X left the nation, he pursued a lot of the efforts that Garvey was literally kept from the government to be able to do, in an effort to, again, aggregate power predicated on this word, African. So that's really all I have to say on that as far as, laying a precedence for it. I think it's an inevitability that we need to move in that direction, whether we want to or not, if we're going to have a chance of remaining competitive in the future. Because it's very clear that other groups of people are doing this. We see this from Russia. We see this from China. We see this from India. We see this from Europe, obviously. We're used to that. Everybody's used to having the global conversation of power with Africa and its diaspora not being included in it. We always end up having to be grafted to another party spoken for us, like the same way a minor has to have an adult. And it doesn't make sense, because at the end of the day, the majority of resources has a point of origin from that continent. And that's what makes this so imbalanced. But that's all I have to say with regards to that.
Well, of course, the problem stems from, at the current moment, I mean, let's just be frank about it. At the current moment, we have a movement called the ADOS movement. And this is a movement whereby African descendants of slavery are making the claim that they are deserving of and have a legal claim to reparations from the United States government. And so therefore, they're seeking to ethnically distance themselves from other populations, other ethnicities, other nationalities of African origin in order to be able to make that claim. And they're also making it a point that they have a different history in relation to slavery, and that they would more readily be willing to identify with their own ethnic group and the closed ranks, as opposed to extending their identity formation in relation to the ideal. Now, I'm not saying that anyone here is doing that. All I'm saying is that I've heard this espoused quite often. And, you know, before you begin, all I want to say is that the specific claims that any people who are in America who have been subjected genealogically to slavery, I don't think is mutually exclusive with the aims and the goals of Pan Africanism. But be that as it may, there still is a group of persons who argue that this goal is unrealizable, it's impractical, it's not attainable. And so therefore we need to work with what we can. And that is focusing in on what is important to us as an ethnic group in this here United States. So I'll let the floor be open up to anyone else who wants to say anything.
So this is the reason why I brought up Garvey in particular in regards to this, because exactly what you just said is precisely the pushback that W.E.B. Du Bois, while he made his ascent into power and recognition and notoriety in academia and in politics, those same arguments are what he brought up as well. And this has happened before. This is not a new conversation. It's just that it's coming up again because the window of opportunity for reparations is showing up. And instead of having it realized as a chain of sympathetic events, it's trying to be forced into a bar graph, which isn't true. Or in other words, our circumstances being seen in a vacuum. There's such a thing as relative correctness and then an absolute correctness, you know, and you can use the same words to describe both, but if you don't have the context of one or the other, you miss the details. So I'll compare a bar graph to a Venn diagram. The truth is much more like a Venn diagram, where there's spheres of events that present overlap. And this idea, like that you said before about, you know, the ADOS concept being mutually exclusive, there's a portion of that that's in one sphere and then a portion of that that is in another. But it's where they meet in the middle, where Pan-Africanism has a point, a place, and can positively aggregate power. Or in other words, those two concepts can exist alongside each other and help act in a synergetic way rather than an antagonistic way. And I think people are so used to dealing with a lot of the identity issues that comes with being classified as Black in the United States that they have to use surface level language to explain something that's far more complex. Like, we lack a vocabulary to really learn how to separate what's the legal jargon to how you're demeaning yourself by isolating that and not realizing that the system of slavery and reparations isn't a United States conversation. It's a global conversation because it was a global network that made it possible in the first place.
Can I respond to that?
For sure, man. Go ahead and make a response.
Okay. I think the ADOS point of view is getting twisted a little bit here. All right. As far as ADOS and reparations is concerned, there's a history in this country of when benefits are extended to black people, it gets diluted by saying people of color or minorities or things like that. All right. So anytime the US government extends things to black people as a result of whether it be slavery or some other sort of discrimination, we end up having to divide the pie or getting none of it to either white women or, you know, groups of people that come from other places that don't have our history in this country. Okay, so now that we're talking about reparations and we're talking about American descendants of slavery, we're making sure that this conversation about reparations is specific to the people that have descendants who were slaves here. That's not antagonistic. It's not anti-immigrant. It's not anti-anybody. Now, the conversation of slavery is bigger than America. So what I would suggest people do, like I said on the last conversation, is holler at your colonizer. If you come from a space that was colonized by a particular nation or country, you need to seek reparations from those people. Okay? It's just like the idea that Germans receive reparations in America. That's an issue. You can't be from a place that was colonized by Great Britain or you were enslaved by the French and think that you're going to get your reparations from the United States of America in a negotiation or an understanding between the diaspora in the United States that they owe us reparations for the slavery that happened here. Okay, so what's happening is when Ado says that, everyone takes it personal, like, oh, nah, but we black too, and we went through oppression and slavery too. Okay, that's fine. You need to holler at the person that owes you for that. You understand? The woman that lives in the next house can't seek reparations from you because her husband whipped her ass. That's crazy. So it's not anti anybody. It's we're used to dividing the pie every time, you understand, someone wants to reach out, this country wants to reach out and right the wrongs. Whether we want to talk about affirmative action or anything else. Usually the backlash comes from the same people we're talking about, whether it be Afro-Caribbeans or continental Africans that live here, who any other time make it a thing that they are different from us. They wave their flag any other time and they let people know, listen, you're American and I'm whatever nation I'm from. But the closer we get to reparations, now it's, oh, we're all oppressed and we're all black. This is a Jedi mind trick being played here. This ain't about anti-you. It's about you don't belong in this particular discussion.
I think this is where we get it. Oh, my bad. Go ahead, family.
Welcome, brother BGS. How you doing, man?
Oh, I'm doing well.
Salute, BGS.
I just came in to holler at Marcus.
No doubt. What's going on?
Hey, what's going on? Well, go ahead and continue.
Yeah, this Ado's conversation is not about being anti anyone. This is a conversation between us and the U.S. government. Okay, if you are not, if your parents or your grandparents, if you're not descendants of slaves in this particular country, you need to holler at the government that you were enslaved by. I think that's reasonable.
Well,
and I think one more thing I want to say. When they had apartheid in South Africa, we rooted for them. We didn't seek any benefits from that. We didn't say that whatever comes of the end of apartheid, we need a cut or a slice of the pie. We root for everyone. You got black people that rooted for the Mexicans that's being locked up and thrown out of this country and all of that. We root for everybody. As soon as we are negotiating our shit, everybody feels away. I'm done.
Right. That's why I mentioned earlier when I gave my explanation to really speak to what Brother Green Gorilla was talking about, as folks wanting to look at it as a bar graph rather than as a Venn diagram. There is levels of overlap, and people are failing to understand that it's in their interest to support us getting reparations here because it can be used as case law and anecdotal evidence for them to get reparations where they're from. This is why everybody that's made a lot of moves in that direction has taken the direction of going to the UN and making it a human rights issue, because it circumvents and it undermines all of these blockades that are put in. Like a lot of the people who are coming from overseas that may be from the Caribbean or from the continent, you know, we're hearing a very specific group of people speaking out against that. When you really get into talking to folks that really are in the majority from these countries, they're not saying the same things. They see it for what it is. It's just we're not hearing from them because it's not popular conversation. They're not getting interviewed on in places like this. You understand what I'm saying? So it's not that this is existing in a vacuum. Everything that you said, Marcus, as far as, you know, us having a case here against the United States for it benefiting economically and having slavery as a policy should and could and needs to exist alongside this idea of Pan Africanism. And it's an acute observation that needs to be acknowledged, that people are missing the point. They're so caught up in somebody else, specifically us as a group, finally getting an opportunity for something, that they're failing to realize that it's in their benefit for us to get this because it's going to trickle down to them as well.
But that points to a bigger problem. If they have an issue of us getting reparations in our own nation, right? Like this is not even a conversation where we are to take something that belongs to them. So then what happens when we do carry out the plan of Pan-Africanism, show up on their soil to then in fact, pretty much be Zionists in Palestine?
Well, here we go with, we need to have a reason for being over there, an agenda. I think that's a big conversation that's going on. A slight digression, there's a little bit of that runoff going right now with Beyonce and her tour,
exactly,
her Black is King tour.
Yeah.
People go over there with preconceived ideas, not realizing that the image of Africa they're carrying is the reflection that we've gotten from other groups of people that colonized it. So we have to have that question of intention and being able to accept Africa for what it actually is.
So
and
what you're saying is a process.
It is a process. Mm-hmm. We're not coming out the package with what we need to make that happen. We need to have that open communication again. Mm-hmm. We need to be able to go over there with an agenda that's conducive towards what everyone's goals are.
You got to go over there like an immigrant. Okay. You got to go over there like an immigrant. Just like when they come over here as an immigrant, you got to go over there as an immigrant. Okay. You can't expect them to just roll out the red carpet and give you the same rights as one of their citizens. It don't work that way. Got to go over there as an immigrant. And Black people have to, we have been sold. They try to sell this idea that you're coming over there as a lost son, as a lost citizen, and you're not. Mm-hmm. Okay, you got to go over there as an immigrant. You got to go over there with the idea that you're an immigrant, and you got to infuse yourself just like when they come over here. Okay, they don't come over here to make a Nigerian enclave or a Nigeria inside the United States or a Ghana inside the United States. They come here to actually integrate into the population. If we go over there, we have to do the same thing. It's not going to happen in one generation. It might not happen in two, but in three. So where you become a part of the country, not a enclave inside the country. That's a whole part of Pan-Africanism. That's the part that people miss. And I've heard people come on here and say, okay, we want them to grant us land so we can be Israel inside of Africa. I said, that's not the way. Pan-Africanism was never built to be that way. You're supposed to go to be absorbed back into Africa, not be separate from it. That's
Facts.
number one. The second thing about ADOS and what this thing has brought up has really nothing to do with reparations. Okay.
I'm listening.
I'm gonna tell you exactly what it is. Okay. The civil rights equal opportunity was meant for Negroes to repair them for the damage that had been done during slavery and Jim Crow and them not being allowed to integrate into the society. Okay. And a lot of people coming from the islands, coming from Africa, are afraid that if we get reparations, they'll start looking at other things like equal opportunity and civil rights and stuff like that that was actually meant to repair the Negro. And they will lose what they have gained in this country. That's what they're afraid of. All of a sudden, they'll become immigrants. They won't be black because they have gone to school, they have gotten positions on being black when it was supposed to be those slots are supposed to go to Negroes. Of the class of people that the United States created. That's what they're afraid of. They're not afraid of reparations. That's just a legal claim, right? Everybody knows in a legal lawsuit, the people that get repaired or get the money are the claimants, or the legal, bona fide, specified claimants. Okay, that is not even in an argument. Okay, the ADOS name was not necessary. You should go back to the original name that you were given. Okay, the Negro of America, that's the class that was created. Their descendants need to be repaired. Pure, point blank, simple. Everybody understand?
What's up, everybody?
Hey, Edward.
What's good, Edward?
But
What's
saying
going on, everyone?
Everybody needs to understand that. Okay, when I heard about ADOS, it had nothing to do with reparations. Can I finish, Edward? If that's okay.
Go ahead, my brother.
Okay. Because I know everyone wants to get in, but I said just let me finish my point. It'll take about a minute. Okay. The point is, there's 50 separate executive orders that are actually specified for Negroes, right? That everybody take advantages of, including white women, okay, and Latinos that are immigrants that are coming in, especially Latinos that are coming in that have been grafted onto something that was actually specified for us. And a lot of people are afraid that white people said we're spending all this money for people that are not claimants to these remedies. And rightfully so. They could actually claw all that stuff back and make all those people immigrants and give those remedies to the people they're supposed to go to, specifically black men. Black men have got virtually nothing of what they fought for. And a lot of the immigrants that have our skin color have been riding off of that. Okay, the elite from another country come over here because they're elite and take advantage of the suffering that black men and especially black men have gone through. Okay, and I don't have any problems. You know what? Just stay out of the way. Okay. If it comes to you're in a position, your brother, you got your degree or your position because you're black, you got grafted in. Okay, we can work that out. But you ain't gotta tear down our house just because you want to keep your position that you really don't deserve. Okay, just shut up and just ride with us. Anyway, after that, I'm finished.
So let me just make a preliminary remark about that, and then I'm gonna let you speak, brother Edward. And I got another person who's waiting, so I'm gonna duck off the conversation and let y'all talk and then chime back in.
Okay.
But I think that what BGS said, the Black Gnostic said, is correct. And I think what's lost in this is class consciousness related to Black people across the diaspora and in Africa as well. Because what we're doing is we're having a conversation primarily about elite people from the Caribbean, from the UK, and from Africa coming into America and being able to take advantages that Black people themselves have not, well, ADOS people have not been able to take advantage of owing to their peculiar history. And this just leaves out the hordes, the masses of Black folks from, say, for example, the Caribbean, who are not elite at all, because there's tokens everywhere. And I've made mention of this. on the show that we had yesterday. Just because you got a group of elite Negroes from elsewhere, we won't even call them Negroes, but Black immigrants from elsewhere, is not indicative of the fact that these persons who are immigrants are reflective of the native populations of Black folks from which they come. Because if you look at it, Africa is filled with poverty. Jamaica is filled with poverty. Grenada is filled with poverty. Brazil is filled with poverty. In order to be able to come over here and be that model Black minority, you already have to have cultural capital. So they do need to be checked. But I don't want that to take away from Pan Africanism as a whole and in general. Because you're always going to have loafers and chiselers and opportunists. You're always going to have that. The question becomes, to me at least, how can we get the masses of people who are Black, who are subjected to imperialism, racism, and a form of global capitalism that keeps them stymied, oppressed, to where they're never able to pull themselves up? And my view is that a bird in the hand is worth more than two in a bush. And right now, this reparations issue is becoming divisive, the extent to which we got to pull ourselves out of this. I'm not expecting, I think that we're owed reparations, but I don't think that it's coming. I don't think these white folks have any intention of giving us reparations. That's just my viewpoint. Now, because if you look at the statistics on it, the polls, they basically illustrate that over 3/4 of African Americans or ADOS persons feel that reparations are due, that it should go through. 15% of white America feels that reparations are due and should go through. Given what's happened currently with these protests, one could argue that there's been a renewed interest in at least investigating the matter. So Congress has had like about 150 persons say that, okay, let's take a look at this. Mm-hmm. But that's two in the bush. The bird in the hand is looking at the futurity of Africa and its increasing capacity to come to the fore as a continent that's progressive, that's becoming more industrialized and modernized, and being able to say, if we can go back there and take our unique skills, and we can matriculate back and forth. But in my viewpoint, unless Africa is able to rise up as a whole, I don't see there being an end to the kind of subjugation that Black people experience all throughout the world, whatever class they're from. But I am going
because I'm not going to be here forever.
We'll talk about that. That is separate from reparations, and that is kind of separate from Pan Africanism. That's
exactly.
That's a different thing. So, but I'll table that for now.
But the reason I say this, but the reason I say this is because, and I got people waiting, so I'm gonna duck off a little bit. But the reason that I say this is because if you look at the origins of Pan Africanism, and the reasons for which it was founded precisely for the reason that I am speaking of, namely to throw off the yoke of racial subjugation and imperial colonization. And it was spearheaded by people from the diaspora. And it's precisely because during the time in which the diasporites, like people from America and the Caribbean, had begun to talk about it and issue proclamations about why it should happen, Africa at that moment was mired deep in colonialization from the French, from Belgium, from Germany, from the Afrikaners. So they didn't have the capacity to speak because they had yokes on their necks themselves.
Yeah. So did the Chinese, but yeah.
So ultimately, I'm going to duck off for a minute and let you all have a conversation, and I'm going to introduce one of the persons who hasn't spoken yet into the conversation, and I'll try to moderate. Every now and then I'll jump in and out, and state my opinion about it. But also, I want to make it clear: please support the channel.
Support your scholar.
support the channel. It is, if you want to hit me on the Cash App, it's G with a PhD with a $ in front of it.
Put the link in. Put the link in so they can hit it. Make it easy for them.
Yes, sir, will do. So I'm gonna duck off, and then I'm gonna allow some other people to get in on this conversation.
Yeah, Edward's got only a little time left. So go ahead, Edward.
Yeah, go, Edward,
Yeah,
and I'll jump in after you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, when it comes to stuff like this, I'm really simple about it. And BGS kind of said a lot of the stuff that I was gonna say. At the end of the fucking day, you got people that's double dipping, and it doesn't matter who they are. It really doesn't. It doesn't matter if it's black women, white women, black immigrants, Hispanics. But
Borgen.
It comes down to is black men are always the one that holds the least amount, and we're the ones that are expected to flex the least. We're the ones that, even when you look at like the election and stuff like that. I mean, if Donald Trump wins again, black men are going to get blamed and people are going to play like they don't understand why black men would be doing this, and it's the game that gets played. But where I get annoyed when it comes to Pan Africans, and I'm not even going to talk about black immigrants, I'm going to talk about the Negro, ADOS black Pan Africans, is they basically, a lot of them have made a decision that they would rather betray ADOS black people. If you really push them in a corner, a lot of the ones that speak against a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, they know exactly what we're talking about. They know that we're not on some, for the most part, anti-immigrant stuff. That we're basically saying, hey, the deck needs to be reordered and we're here. We are fighting these wars. A lot of these black immigrants are not in the military, like it's ADOS black men, Vietnam, all of that. I haven't been in the military, but got family members that were in the military. And black ADOS black men are the ones that's getting the least benefit. And everybody wants to buy into this game that, whether it's whatever degree or another, buy into, including black women, they want to buy into this game where they all throw us under the bus. And what they don't really understand is by them buying into the game, low key, they're reaffirming the very system that they talk about they don't like. And going back to Pan Africanism, they're reaffirming. Now they think they're taking an immediate hit for a long-term benefit of overall black people. This is the Talib Kweli like mindset. But at the end of the day, that's the genius of white supremacy. And then it'll be Chinese supremacy after that. Is these little sacrifices that they think they're making on some bullshit. They think it's going to pay dividends later on, and it never does. And I can prove it. Even when you look at Africa, and I get Africa has just really come online, but a lot of very fundamental things that keeps them fucked up in the first place, they still do. The tribal, and I understand it takes time for tribalism, and it takes time for all of that. But at the end of the day, they do the same things that actually allow for them to be messed up. So this idea that if Africa's rising, well, the truth is, yeah, Africa may get more. Reality is by that time, it's going to be other groups in there that's going to control what they can and cannot do. So they'll still be in the same position. It's just they're more industrialized. And they're not going to understand that, and they'll still be doing the same tribal shit that they do 100 years from now. That this like black awakening that really needs to happen is not really happening, and it's not, as far as I'm concerned, projected to really happen. So a lot of times people buy into this fantasy that, well, if I just F up, ADOS Americans, I'm almost finished, ADOS Americans, and America's falling down, then the ones that are really true Pan-African are going to leave America anyway, and then the ones that don't matter really don't. And where I see a lot of justification of certain ADOS Pan-Africanists to be against reparations or to try to preach that black people are unduly going after black immigrants, which is not really true. But it's something that which basically allows them to, AKA, make black men look bad. So,
thank you.
And by the way, one thing that I've noticed too is I don't see a lot of black men go. Black women has taken to ADOS pretty well too, comparably speaking. And usually when I hear black men, their Pan Africans go after people for being anti-black immigrant, they're usually not talking about systems. I've noticed that they usually go out of their way to talk about brothers when it comes to that, which is also something that I've observed. So at the end of the day, I'll say this: they know what they're doing. We know that they know what they're doing, but we still talk all this BS. Like we want to act like there's just, if I just say it the right way, then folks are going to accept and buy into the bullshit that I'm talking about. And that's the main thing I want to put out there.
Let me touch on that. Let me squeeze in real quick. So, like I said yesterday, I'm Haitian descent, born and raised born and raised in America. And something I want to touch on, and I was actually having this conversation with a coworker that's Black American. And I said, you know what the game was? You import the new rulership class of the Black community. Number one, you get Black women to cleave off Black men and think they have some type of kinship and allyship with Black female immigrants. That's what one of my biggest problems is that Black Americans never actually got to set up how they wanted their community to work after the civil
Did I
rights
cut
movement.
out?
No, I
How
can
much
still
did
hear
I cut
you.
out? Oh,
I
okay.
can still hear you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
My
yeah,
bad.
yeah. Yeah, but Black Americans never got a chance to set up how they wanted the Black community to be operated right when you got out of the civil rights movement. So once you get out the civil rights movement, mid 70s, you get boom, you get hit with a bunch of immigrants, a lot of Black immigrants now. So that's why a lot of our ideas of quote unquote patriarchy, that some mid running shit, a lot of these things are getting conflated with maybe something that was going on in Nigeria, right? Or maybe something that was going on in Jamaica or Haiti. So all of these things are happening because Black Americans never actually got to sit down and be like, okay, this is our particular story that's disconnected from Africans in many ways. Yes, we're all brown or Black, right? We have similar stories, but it's not the exact same story. And I think what white society did was very genius, which is we're gonna have these immigrants, and not just Black immigrants, but we're gonna have these immigrants that come and take this finite slot of jobs. Every year there's a finite number of jobs, right? So instead of us having Black men and Black women being on a certain level, we'll cleave off the Black men. They'll go to prison or they'll be homeless or whatever, and that space will be for women of color or men of color that are not necessarily ADOS men, and that's one of the issues you see with a lot of sisters. They're saying they're in these law offices, they're in these white collar spaces, and they don't see Black men. And the higher up they climb, the less Black men they see. And if they do see any brothers, it's either a gay brother or a continental African or a Black Caribbean dude that wants nothing to do with them. So they're like losing across the board, and I'll stop right there.
I agree with the statements of the last two gentlemen. I mean, it's a game being played, man. It's always about making us look crazy. I mean, at the end of the day, this is what we're owed. I don't even see the ADOS movement and reparations as being, you know, linked to Pan Africanism. That's just my opinion. I think that both things can exist at the same time. But what I generally see, whether it be online or anywhere else, pardon the phone ringing in the background. What I generally see online and everywhere else is that the first thing, whether it be Afro-Caribbeans or Africans, hold on, let me deal with this phone. Stop it from ringing.
Did you
It'll
drop
stop.
out?
Yeah,
Okay, okay, there.
I'm still here. I just wanted to get rid of that phone ringing in the background. But basically,
Bad.
to me, the response of Afro-Caribbeans and Africans and Black people from other places outside of the U.S. It's a little disturbing and disheartening that most of their responses to the idea that Black people can get reparations from America is a problem for them, or either they're against it or they're against it because they're not included in the conversation, especially when we have supported all of their movements in their own countries. That's a problem for me. I don't know who else is a problem for, but that's a problem for me because when we see atrocities, whether they be in Africa or the Caribbean or anywhere else, man, we're the first ones that make noise about it. You understand?
Hey man, I don't mean to cut you off, but I got a question for you. Have you ever heard somebody actually explain that without a whole bunch of nigga babble, what you just said? Because I've heard that same thing. No, when they say that they're against reparations, and you say, okay, I'm gonna hear you. Explain to me why, and I'll just listen. And all I hear is nigga babble when they say that.
I mean, they you know, usually I hear from a lot of these people, namely for the most part Caribbeans. What I hear from Africans is, oh, you know, we all black, why, you know, this, that, and the third, whatever.
Now we're all black. I
Right.
wish they would. Go ahead.
Cherry picking.
Nigga babble, yeah.
Yeah, so it's, you know, from Afro-Caribbeans, it's, you know, it's pretty much the same thing. You're anti-us. You're trying to separate yourself from us. This and that. We all oppressed people. We all been through slavery and this and that and the other. And while all that might be true, you ain't all been oppressed as you know, as slaves to this particular nation. You know, I don't collect the $5 that you owe me from another person. I collect it from you. You understand? And that's how that works. And discussion between me and this man that owes me that debt has nothing to do with you.
So if we're all oppressed, how come they're not lining up and helping us get what we deserve?
Exactly.
Yeah.
If we're all black, and everybody knows for 150 years that black Americans have been owed reparations from this government. Everybody knows that it's not something that dropped off the planet or dropped off the apple tree yesterday. This is a 150-year fight. Everybody knows it. The Black American struggle is famous throughout the whole planet. Everybody knows this shit, right? You can't say that you don't know, okay? Especially Caribbeans, right? It's bullshit, right? You know, I'm not gonna cuss on my doctor's well, BGS, you remember? But here's hold on. Here's a cognitive dissonance.
One at a time.
BGS, a real question. You remember when me and Cerulean, we had that Caribbean chick, and she was sitting there playing the game about all these magical grants that she was getting to go to school because she was picking the right shit. And the thing about me is I'd rather talk to a Richard Spencer, and I mean this to the bottom of my heart. There's somebody that's going to tell me how they feel and how they stand and say what, you know, then people that's going to talk to me like I'm stupid. Like, it was a breath of fresh air when Jason Black asked Richard Spencer, does white supremacy exist or white privilege exist? And Richard Spencer said, yes, it does, and we should have more of it. You can never have enough white privilege. Okay, so at least I'm not stupid, because that's actually a firm thing, right? So when you talk to your own, quote unquote, your own people, and we deal with this with our women all the time, so we're used to it. But you talk to other men, that's where it gets on my nerves. And they sit there and talk to you like they have to think you're stupid, because this isn't even like good game they're giving you. They're just pretend. They're just in denial. I hate talking to men that are in denial.
You simply say, okay, brother, where you from? I'm from Jamaica. I'm from Haiti. I'm from Dominica. I'm from wherever, right? Can I go to your island and get the same rights that somebody on that's a citizen there get?
Yeah.
He's gonna say no.
Oh yeah. BGS, I asked for citizenship.
All you have to do is ask Akon that same question, because the distortion field that he placed on the conversation is the same. It's the same distortion field anybody belonging to a percentage of people who overwhelmingly migrate to the U.S. end up saying. You have the Asian demographic saying it. I hear it all the time. You got people from all over the continent that come over here and say it. They belong to a specific percentage of people who had the privilege to come over here, and they adopt that mindset. And a lot of them don't even get allowed to come over here unless they have those similar values. And a lot of them, in addition to that, especially individuals that are from North Africa, gain the opportunity to get this classification of Caucasian. Kamala Harris is an excellent example of that with her parents. That has implications as far as your classification when you get here, and it creates again that mitigation effect that Brother Marcus was talking about us continually to get marginalized for our legal claim on what was supposed to get done to us.
The conclusion of that is to cut.
Let him finish, Edward. Let him finish.
What I was saying is, at the end of the day, these laws don't even get passed unless they get to include other groups of people who get to put their hands in the pot, but it's still reclassified as case closed, which is disingenuous, messed up. Nobody wants to sit down and look at the long-term damage that causes.
Yeah.
No, they don't care. They look at it. Oh, they don't give a fuck. It's a part. No. It's a part of the plan, and that's and I'm this.
You're borging out, Edward.
You borged, Edward. You borged.
Hey, could I play devil's advocate on?
Way you look at it is you have to be like, okay, hold on. This is
let Edward finish.
This
then
is
you can play devil's advocate.
This is why you say, okay, I have to doubt. Like it's almost like somebody would say, okay, you're homophobic. Well, the reality is, if you're saying my definition of being homophobic is saying that I don't believe that two people of the same gender should get married, I could be somebody that believes they should get civil unions. But I don't believe they should be able to call it marriage. So now that makes me homophobic because what they keep doing is they keep on moving the football constantly into your yard line until if you get past anything other than the 99-yard line, all of a sudden now they're using these terms to classify you as an anti-something. So the reality is the only way to dial that back in the middle is you have to put more force behind it, which is going to make you appear to be anti. So this is why black immigrants, they don't understand. They say they're a smaller percentage.
They understand.
Well, they'll say they're smaller. They'll say they're a smaller number, and you say, why don't you deal with Hispanics or other people? Because it's not as hard to get black people to understand that with Hispanics than it is with your own people. When your own people are doing the same thing, and you all supposed to be more closer to us.
Exactly.
Because Hispanics cannot pass for black, whereas black immigrants can.
That's true.
Yep. And let Randall get in. We all want. When it's to their advantage, we're all one big nigga. When it's not to their advantage, I'm not part of. I'm not a nigga.
And I hate that. And that class bullshit, I hate. And you know what? Our women don't even do that shit that blazing.
As much.
They at least try to sneak it. But so it's like Yep. That's all I need to say.
Go ahead, Randall. What's your devil's advocate? Because I got a pitch for it for the devil. Go ahead.
Oh, I want to hear this shit. Yeah.
You got to speak up because we barely hear you.
That shit.
You got to speak up. We can barely hear you, bruh. We can barely hear you. Either get closer to the mic or speak up. We can barely hear you. Randall, we can barely hear you.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
A lot better. Yes, thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. So my biggest thing with reparations is how they might use it to divide us, not just within immigrants versus actual ADOS, but how will they define who is black and who actually gets it? Because a lot of people that we may consider black may be, mixed to some degree.
In other words, what does descendant mean? Words are important. What does descendant mean?
For me personally, through the father.
Through the who?
Through the father.
It doesn't matter. You can be descendant. You can become. You have a maternal line and a paternal line. That's a descendant, right?
Yeah.
It's clearly defined. Can you trace your family tree back to those class of people?
So what about those white people that have a great grandfather that was white?
I got an answer for that.
Hold on a second.
Native Americans.
If a white person can go through his family tree and prove that he is a descendant, he's one of those descendants, he should get paid just like everybody else.
Facts.
I have a different opinion of that. I personally believe
we talk about legality.
The term legally of descendant.
Legally descendant. Okay.
Well,
if you're gonna use it, you're gonna have to take the good with the bad. If they can prove it,
okay.
Like the dollar Indians,
that's
right?
cool. That's cool. But hold on. That's cool. But just hear me out, and I promise it'll be 30 seconds. If you put on your paper, your personal paperwork that you create, that you are white, you are Caucasian, and that your parents put on your birth certificate that you white, I don't give a damn if you Joakim Noah and your granddaddy dark belt. You validated yourself.
Well, that's you. Okay, that's what you believe. But legally. We're talking about legally.
If you put me in a corner, then you take the good with the bad.
We're taking feelings out of this because you're not going to get reparations on feelings, will you?
Okay, well, I get it. If you put me in a corner there, you got to take the good with bad with it. But I'm interested in, you said the divide part. How is that going to divide anybody? Because at the end of the day, the only way it's going to divide is if people don't get money.
There we go.
They're not gonna be worried if everybody getting paid. If everybody getting paid is supposed to get paid, yeah, a couple other people's gonna get paid, and people gonna feel some type of way about that. But the reality is, it's only a division issue if they don't get paid.
Well, let him define it.
Go ahead.
Well, I took him at the current moment. I just took Randall out of the conversation.
Oh, okay, because we were trying to figure out. We wanted him to define what he was talking about, but he didn't define it.
Here's the deal about this, okay? Mm-hmm. There are a lot of Black people who currently are passing as white.
Okay.
Who have descendants that have been slaves.
Okay.
And I don't know what kind of complication that would actually make in relation to being deserving of receiving reparations.
Okay.
But as far as I'm concerned, I kind of side on Edward's side with this. Mm-hmm. Like if you're playing the white game and you're actually able to identify as white,
right,
and you're actually able to operate and perform in the world as white,
mm-hmm.
then you are benefiting from whiteness.
Okay.
And look, what I don't want to happen is to lose sight of the big picture here, because ultimately, this is what.
Especially if you put it on your documents.
Well, wait a minute.
We're talking about law and legality, so we're not, because that's where you're going to get paid.
Well,
from.
you can you can make a law.
You can.
That puts that in.
Then you're going to complicate everything. The thing is, then you need to change it from descendants of slaves into something else.
But see, what
we can, but go ahead.
Go ahead, doctor.
What I don't want to happen here is to lose sight of the topic at hand.
Okay.
Well,
which today is not reparations.
Okay.
But it is Pan Africanism.
Okay.
And see what I would argue, mm-hmm. if we must talk about reparations and we must talk about immigrants who come over here, mm-hmm. if they're identifiable as Black, is that they are not operating under the principles and the paradigm of Pan Africanism. Mm-hmm. They're not. And so if they're not, if you are an adherent of the ideal, and if you think that in the future there is some sort of benefit to be achieved from the ideal, in contradistinction to somehow trying your best to fit into this culture, which has indelibly marked us off from entering into the social body, primarily because we are Black. Right? So if it is the case that this is a global phenomenon, do we, as people who are identifiable as Black, need to accept, adopt, and promote the Pan-African idea?
Let me jump in here.
Well, we already do.
That's a different thing.
Let the professor finish.
But that is the topic of the conversation, because what happens is, mm-hmm. when we start speaking about Pan-Africanism, it mm-hmm. often elides into a conversation about bourgeois neoliberal capitalist Negroes from across the globe, whether mm-hmm. they be from Africa, whether they be from the Caribbean, whether they be from, the UK, wherever they're from. So my viewpoint is that these people aren't Pan-African at all, and mm-hmm. that if they were, right, they would be more understanding about the situation that Black people find themselves in. So the argument would become, we need more Pan-Africanism, not less.
Yeah. I mean, so in other words, what you're saying is these people are taking advantage of Pan-Africanism, but they're not Pan-Africanism themselves.
Exactly. And the thing about it is, look, African Americans pretty much hold the patent for the most part. I know Marcus Garvey, but he had to come here for Pan-Africanism. So we have the strongest case. So what we say is what it is. And because the reality of the situation is, here's the problem. Our group is the biggest body that actually has I would say the Black Brazilians are close too, but they're like that because they're completely locked the fuck out. But our body is probably the biggest group that we can actually get people on a Pan-Africanist board as a bigger body. Everybody else is playing tribal games, class games, because we're the ones that are most sophisticated with dealing with white supremacy, because we're in one of the epicenters of that these Africans, they get. go ahead.
You live in Rome, so you live at the head in the belly of the beast.
That is true. I'll give you, and then, so that's just happenstance. So that is definitely true. But at the same time, but you're right. But what I'm saying to say that is the problem is, even if you have a pure Pan-Africanist argument, which that's what the topic is, the reality is, even the folks that are speaking against it, they're not so much there against Pan-Africanism. We know the Captain America hyper assimilations, your Brandon Tatum, Anthony Brian Logans. We know that. But most Black people we see that as a one-way street. And other groups will try to tell us that it's not, but it's obvious in every metric that you press them on, even the ones that are here, that it is. And when you go over there, because then, okay, the real issue is that it's that everybody comes over here coons. That's what they want to say. That's what the real Africans will say. Well, I mean, we got people that's over there. I don't agree with everything with what our Kathy does as far as how she goes. She needs to be a lot more diplomatic in what she says. But the reality of the situation is, when you look at Black people that are in Africa, when they're actually keeping it all the way 100 and tell the truth, you find that it's the same thing, but a different aspect. They will let other people in the door. They will let other people in the door that will actually block them out. Versus us, when we bring our money, not asking them for shit, we'll bring our money. Then they want to be stupid with us just because we're Black. This is the stuff that goes on for the people that are actually over, and I mean over there. Like, they moved over there. And see, and the thing is, African, this is the thing that I would tell anybody that's African and Caribbean. Caribbeans don't tend to do it as much because they tend to be closer to it, so we know where the bullshit's coming from. Stop talking to us like we don't know. I understand that most Black people ain't paying attention to this, but stop talking to folks that's talking about it like we don't know, and so y'all can just tell us a lie and we gonna buy it because we know you lying. And if that stops, then we can start getting into the real business of what Pan-Africanism needs to be. But we can never get into what their issues is. What their issues is, because they're too busy bullshitting. Can't get past the bullshit.
Breathe
anyway.
I can't agree with that more. I do, and even BGS, you said a lot of things that I agree with. And I understand. Like I said, like Gigi has said, this is not a conversation about reparations, but just the pushback on reparations that has nothing to do with these groups of people should be an indication of their opinions of Black Americans.
Some of them, not all of them.
Of course, some of them. Not everybody. In
fact, the vast majority, if you couldn't go poll all 1.3 billion Africans, the vast majority would have no opinion on reparations one way or the other. The vast majority.
You've got a lot of people over there that don't even understand how the slave trade went down.
You had Valeri was just in here. Valeri, but there's lots of them that I talked to that believe in it, that have been actually actively pushing for African Americans for a very long time to get reparations.
So here's one of the issues that happens with Pan-Africanism. People have to remember what was going on globally when it was really hot. If you look at any flags, most flags that are going on now in the continent, they were formed when they received their independence, and I put that in quotes, from the countries that were colonizing them. And the main inspirations
about 60 years ago.
The main inspirations that they took to make those movements was the Pan-Africanist movement as an ideology. And so there's a lot of those individuals where at the time when it was required, they took advantage of that. But what happened with them? The government was compromised, and the level of corruption that goes on and the level of brainwashing as far as distorting the image of how this plays out is so compromised.
Europe put a lot of work into
okay, you guys cannot speak. You cannot interrupt people and speak over people because you have an audience. This is not a separate call. We're not sitting in a room by ourselves. You got about 100 people watching. So you can't cut people off. You can't talk over people. You got to make your point and allow other people to get in, because I know Gigi's trying to manage this, but you guys got to be respectful of each other. Don't cut people off in mid-sentence, okay? Let him make his point, and you guys try to shorten it up a little bit so people can get in, so you don't get bit, right?
So Pan-Africanism as a strategy makes sense. We just have not been able to practice it as a tactic for a while, for a very long time, yet people have been able to use it to posture themselves when it's beneficial. That was the point I was speaking to. Whoever wants to go ahead.
My talking to that.
Hold on, Randall wanted to get in, so I cut him off. Go ahead. You got to speak up, Randall.
When a lot of these countries got
Randall, you got to speak up, bro. You're very low. I don't know what you did last time, but do it again, okay?
All right, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
That's better.
All right, yeah. So post-independence, Europe. These ex-colonialist countries went through a lot of work trying to nip these Pan-Africanist movements in the bud. I mean, you look at Nkrumah in Ghana and how, basically they backed, and essentially they were compromised. But what you were saying was right. I mean, it makes a lot of sense when, consolidating power, and the world is moving more towards very large alliance blocks, and with this new Cold War is starting right now with China. With Trump's presidency kicked
starting since 1995, bro. Go ahead.
A lot of moves have been made, and you see a lot of these African countries leaning more towards China, and that in a lot of ways, the way China's economy.
I'm a resident expert of it, bro.
Yeah.
Okay. And trust and believe the reason they're moving towards China is, one, because the United States and Europeans blocked African Americans from actually doing it, and the second thing is China was the only game in town. But go ahead.
But as it moves on, the next proxy wars will very likely happen on that continent. And
such as, where do you see that happening?
Where South Africa is a very likely one.
Proxy wars against whom?
So I know South Africa right now, they're trying to expropriate the land from the Afrikaners for that. 6%. 6% of them own like 90% of the land.
Okay.
And you look at how Trump has treated Zimbabwe post. We put sanctions on them, and cut them out the world economy. And I see
which Zimbabwe actually may cut a deal with China and Great Britain to actually fix their economy.
Yeah,
but they did it about 3 years ago. Well, go ahead.
But I think Pan-Africanism is a way to avoid these conflicts by consolidating ourselves and saying we're not going to fight.
What's your definition of Pan-Africanism? Because you're not making it clear.
Black people united.
Black people united. Okay, that's a very broad term. Let's get it in, so dig down another level deep.
For Americans, ultimately, does your national identity take precedence over your ethnic identity?
In other words, Pan-Africanism, should we deal with Africa, Black people in America deal with Africa the way white people deal with Europe? Is it the white people intertwine with Europe and actually deal with them according to so-called race, if we want to use that as a term, ethnicity?
Culture.
They do, right?
Call it culture.
Well, ethnicity. Okay, culture is something different. We have white culture. Okay, that's plain and simple. We do not have an African culture. We have a white culture, right? That's what we have. We're talking about ethnicity. Okay.
Ethnicity. Well, ethnicity. You look at the countries the U.S. is a lot allied with.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no. These people have very similar values. Very similar. They easily assimilate between them.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes.
Ultimately, creating something like that for ourselves.
Yeah, that's true. That's ultimately the goal. So is it fair that black Americans deal with the African continent, or be allowed to deal with the African continent the same way that Europeans deal with America, with white people in America?
Exactly.
That's all. That's really all it is in a nutshell. It's not really that complicated. We make it too complicated.
But one thing I want to say.
Go ahead, Professor.
Oftentimes, Pan-Africanism, which, by the way, was initiated by diasporas. Okay, let's make this clear, and it has subsequently become adapted and adopted by Native Africans themselves.
It's an inherently.
Let the professor finish, please.
Yeah. Sure, bro. I will kick you.
Let the professor teach. Okay.
So it has subsequently been taken up by Africans themselves as they have undertaken the process of decolonialization. Now, if you know, you might not know that at the turn of the 20th century, there was something called the Scramble for Africa. I don't know if you know about this, or it's also called the Partition of Africa,
Yep.
which was basically the invasion, the occupation, and the division and the colonialization of African territories by European powers, and they established nation states within the context of Africa itself. Okay, so you have Francophone, meaning French-speaking Africans. You have English-speaking Africans, right? Then you have Africans with their own countries, with their own nationality, which have basically been created ad hoc by Europeans. But the development of the African Union was a move on the part of Africans themselves to try to overcome their tribalism, their clanism, their nationalism, so that they can deal with the conditions that obtain related to globalism. Because this is just the way the world is moving. Now, one could argue it's going to be a difficult process, but it is a process. And if Africa doesn't undertake this process and do this successfully, they will not emerge as a global power. But white America is not the only player on the global landscape. It's just one player. Although it is a very powerful player, it's not the only player. China is a big power player. And the Africans over there are dealing with some African nations are dealing with China. Some African nations are dealing with British. Some African nations are dealing with Americans. The partition is still being undertaken to some degree. Ultimately, Africa needs to become autonomous, and they're making efforts and they're prescribing measures in order to do that. Now, the question is, do anybody or does anyone from America who considers themselves ADOS, do they have a stake in seeing that occur or happen? That's the crux of the matter. Do we have a stake in Africa's emergence as a global superpower?
Yeah, you do. You do. Because if you talk to them, if you actually sit down and talk to the leaders, okay, they naturally China's only game in town, and basically they're trading resources for infrastructure. Okay, it's an obvious trade, right? The thing is, and they're willing to do business with the Chinese because they're the most reasonable powers who actually do it, right? But guess what? They don't trust them. Guess who they trust? Is it more reasonable to trust somebody that looks like you or somebody that doesn't?
The person who looks like you.
The person that looks like you, which is exactly why, in fact, in 2002 or something like that, AFRICOM was proposed to actually be led by all black troops, right? You had plenty of black troops. You could have funded AFRICOM. You could put black African troops, African American troops on that land to actually help peacekeeping, whatever you need for AFRICOM, right? Why do you think white people rejected that? Because they did not trust you, because you would be more sympathetic to people that look like you. The Africans know that. That's why they want African Americans to come to actually start infrastructure. My group, as small as we were part of that process. We encourage all the African trade shows that come over to actually propose projects and stuff like that from the continent. They come over here. They're in Washington, D.C., New York, L.A., wherever. We were part of that because we told them people will not travel over there. You're going to have to bring your proposals just like anybody else over here and propose it to black people directly. Okay. They're here because they want you to be part of it. It's not moral, it's not emotional, it's not sympathetic, it's just pragmatic. The people who will be more sympathetic towards you will be people that look like you. And that has been blatantly obvious even with the Chinese. The Chinese want, they come over there, they want to do business, but they also want to separate. They want to be around people that look like them.
brother, Green Gorilla,
go ahead, I'm sorry.
can you swap me with Valeri so he can come up and talk about that? He's on the continent now. I think
he's
a good idea.
I'm gonna dump you off, Randall, and then I'm gonna bring you.
Yeah, let me touch on something before Valeri starts speaking. So, we were speaking about the doctor was speaking about class. So Yvette Carnell covered how there are Indians that are coming from India and they're still practicing this class system or caste system, better yet, in America, in the STEM fields in California, where they're holding people up. So it'll be a Brahmin who might have gotten here 10 years ago, holding up a Dravidian who got here 3 years ago and is up for a promotion, and he won't get it because he's not Brahmin. And so we have to understand that some of that is not, it's not as bad for us in the diaspora, but some of that is being practiced to a certain extent in America amongst Black people when it comes to tribalism, right? We have to understand that some of our brothers from the continent, they don't have a problem looking down on other Black people. They look down on other Black people within their tribe, and they look down on other Black people outside of the tribe, right? One thing that I admire and I like about Black Americans, and I understand that some Black Americans.
Hello?
Yeah, we lost you. We lost you, brother.
We lost you, Z. Okay, Valeri, go ahead.
Yeah, hello.
Can you guys hear me now?
Okay, we lost you for a minute.
Okay, so let me just finish real quick. One thing that I actually like about Black Americans is that they don't actually have a class structure, and it allows for different people to mingle and actually appreciate. Oh, your dad did this, my dad did that, but we still find ourselves in these same spaces, and I think that makes it easier to talk about Pan Africanism and to talk about the Black experience in this greater way, because we don't have this rigid class division. When you start talking about some of our African brothers and sisters, that class division is very rigid. And especially when you start talking about other people of color outside of the Black community, outside of the Black diaspora, like Indians or any other Middle Eastern or East Asian, South Asian groups, they have a very strict class structure. So that's something that we got to think about when we talk about Pan Africanism and how hard it's going to be to kind of I think we're going to have to drag continental Africans kicking and screaming into Pan Africanism, to tell you the truth. I'll just say it like that, and I'm done.
Can I jump in here?
No, you won't. But I think Valeri is next. But go ahead.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. Greetings, Dr. Gigi and Master Teacher, rest of the panel, and the rest of the chat. So, like the brother that was just talking about, basically tribalism and inside the U.S. by immigrants. Well, there are different dynamics to this actually. For instance, now let's say somebody that's coming from a minority tribe in his country, maybe got to America via scholarship or maybe some Christian group or whatever. He gets here, he levels up. He's gonna turn around and try to help his own people and screw up the majority tribe that was screwing them over, and vice versa also. It happens amongst all the other groups. The Africans, the Asians, all of them do that. And regarding the whole Pan-African thing, I've been seeing like a lot of videos on it. O'Shea is doing some Kinganda series, basically discussing a lot of stuff with Black Americans. There's something that I kind of noticed, and I think there will be a little problem down the line. Not now, when things start actually picking up. For instance, now on the continent, everybody knows majority Black. So when the men sit down to talk, elders like BJS, they have their say. Those of us Gen X, we kind of will chip in. There is a hierarchy. So for instance, now let's say all the different groups of Black people sit down to have a discussion. What's gonna happen? Keisha is gonna think, all you niggas shut up. Let her have her talk. When any of the brothers from the continent try to check her, guess who's gonna want to, be Captain Super Negro? There's gonna be a problem. So a lot of the brothers that are going to the continent are going to have to tell themselves, okay, look, men rule here. Let me see how men here do things, and let the sisters know, look, you're going to Africa. This is how sisters behave over there. We are just 40 million. This 1.2 billion people. We can't change them. So we can have our own tribe, you know, with our own dynamic, how we do things among ourselves. But when dealing with the other groups, there's going to be like, you know, how will I say, a modus operandi, because each tribe has their own quirks, you know, bullshit that they do that other tribes don't, and vice versa. But everybody knows, okay, when I'm dealing with people from outside my group, there's a bare minimum everybody expects. And this is because, you know, piggying back of that Kati situation, she basically carried that whole, you know, yeah, niggas ain't shit mentality to the continent. And Gambians are very, very lovable people. They're not fucked up like we Nigerians are, you know. So of course to them, like, this is an outrage. If it was in Nigeria, yeah, there are a lot of people that are hot-headed like that. So she won't be catching much flag about that. And also, like, if I would have my wish, I would have wished, you know, you guys disband the Congressional Black Caucus. Fuck anybody that's not ADOS being in politics if it's not local and in the district that they're the majority. They have no business being on the national level. That's you guys' shit. Because I can't take my black ass to Ghana, even if I have a parent that's Ghanaian, and next thing, everything Ghana, it's me being shown. That's not fair. If I tell Africans here on the continent that affirmative action for you guys is taken up by immigrants, they won't believe me. Because here, like, let's say in northeastern Nigeria, where Boko Haram has been ravaging people, if the government sets up scholarship for people, they're supposed to be those from there. Somebody from another part knows not to get in. It's not for him. So you guys have been screwed over, and many of us on the continent don't know this. The bastards that go there, you know, whether they're the Boule or some of the, you know, handpick, you know, from the missionaries or whatever, they know what the hell they're doing, and they're trying to be the middlemen. You know, so they're trying to be the middlemen. Sorry, what did I say?
Fourth window, you got to mute yourself, man. Fourth. Okay. All right. Go ahead, Bulleri.
Yeah. So one thing I notice is a lot of the guys that are, you know, the immigrants, because, you know, I live in Europe, so a lot of times when I see, oh, some Black Americans coming, for me to realize, oh, just some Nigerian Americans or, you know, Canadian Americans, they know exactly what they're doing. Because what pissed me off is that you're a professor in America that study maybe a bachelor's in Nigeria or master's, but never for once did you bother to invite your Black American friend that's a lecturer to come and do his sabbatical back home. Why is that? But you can bring a white guy. Is because they don't want direct contact from you guys with the continent, because you guys are the face of blackness. Let's see, as far as the people on the continent are concerned, you guys are Blade and the Black Panther and everything. People look up to you. They know this, and they're trying to basically be in the middle. If there's going to be anything good, it's going to have to go through them, you know. And many people in the, you know, in the diaspora, they're either the family and friends or the rivals of the politicians. So for the whites, it's a win-win situation. Get the sellouts that rob their country, destroyed it, come here, brainwash them and their kids, send them back to continue via proxy fucking up the whole continent, you know. So, and now there's a lot of tension on the continent because people are tired of the old guard, you know. The old leaders are dying off, and these young cats, you know, they're hot-headed. So that's why for the leaders, they can't just steal money, go invest in Europe. They have to do some developmental stuff, because if not, there'll be more cases of armed resistance and whatever. So they need if, for example, like, you know, there are business groups of areas going, targeting specific industries, they're gonna have a lot of play, because people don't like the Chinese. If it was maybe the Japanese, probably they might have succeeded better, but Chinese are just too raggedy, to be honest. And many of us are learning the hard way, like, oh shit, you guys actually know them, you've been living with them. Kind of like our own case with like Lebanese in some parts, whether it's West Africa or Indians in East Africa. So the only thing that I have to say, you know, we owe you guys more, and I think it's time for us to do our own part, because we learned what the hell black is. The first time maybe a black kid on the continent saw something good, it's probably you guys that wise begrudgingly let it slip in, you know, or maybe whether it's a movie or, you know, whether you heard of Neil Degrasse Tyson or whatever. So I think if you guys, we need to do something more politically, find ways any politician that is not ADRS, that's black, that's not representing you, boot their ass, get them kicked. And let it be known, this is your father's house. Just because we're cousins doesn't mean you get to sleep in my father's room. Even I, you know, can only do that when I'm sick or something like that. Sorry if I'm getting long-winded. I just got triggered.
No,
Sorry.
I actually want to add on something you said when you spoke about. I do think being Haitian descent and mainly growing up with other black Americans mainly, but also Black Caribbeans and Black Africans, I do sense that bit of jealousy. Like, why are the Black Americans the ones that are leading the Black diaspora? There is a jealousy there. We have to address it. And you see it sometimes. You'll see Black, like, if you click on just about any pop culture video, you'll see Black Brits in the comments replying in a certain way, Black Canadians replying in a certain way, right? And you can sense that jealousy. And you even saw it with the Yvonne Orji interview on the Breakfast Club, where I think it was Charlemagne that asked her, what is this we hear about Africans looking down on Black Americans? And her response was it was really bad. She was like, it's not that we're looking down, we just stay looking up. And it just sounded so corny and forced and lame. And it was one of those smug responses that's really condescending, but they try to make it sound like empowering somehow. So you do see this. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Ivan Orji is Nigerian from a particular tribe. That's what they do in the country that gets them hated by everybody, but they love to cry that they're the victims, blah blah blah. So they just took what the shit that they do, even among themselves, and they brought it over to your shores. And with the blessings of the whites, they are allowed to continue it.
And what's interesting
That's
about
exactly what it is. I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
What's interesting about what you just said is that's exactly what took place during the Grab for Africa period. These individuals had been cartographing and mapping out the continent for an extremely long period of time. So they knew what nations had issues with who shared resources, and they recognized that nations and tribes had an interdependent system. And by purposefully intervening with that, they could literally pit one group against another by saying, you can identify with me, and as a result, I'm going to look out for you and give you this education. And now this other group is going, oh, they have this education. They think they're better than you. Here are these weapons so you can defend your territory. What do you think ends up happening? That same paradigm is being done on a global scale when they cherry pick specific individuals from the continent to be allowed to come over here and then furthermore employed so that system of self-governance and equilibrium can take place, and it distorts the whole image, which is why I was talking about how, again, when Pan-Africanism was forming, Africa was in the clutches of dealing with the remnants of that grab for Africa, which is why they had to go through those revolutions. It was a tool that was useful at the time and was critical. And a lot of that is distorted right now because a lot of people can get by without needing that. So when you have, and this is why it keeps feedback looping back into the reparations discussion, this literally takes the Band-Aid off that was placed when we begin to see that a lot of the reason why we're not over there doing that now, it's because of the same systematic nonsense that mitigated those funds that were supposed to come to us so that we could aggregate that into power. And last thing I was going to say with that, if people pay attention to why Garvey got deported and kicked out, it had everything to do with the Black Star Liner. And its whole purpose was to close that is to exclude that middleman of interference that had been put there that was keeping us from being able to properly import and export raw goods from the continent and refine them over here, which would simultaneously employ Black folks on this side and also allow us to compete with China because we could get raw resources without having to go through them and have it as higher quality. That's what you call cornering a market, and we would have blew them out the water. But go ahead.
I wanted to. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wish more and more people will be ADOS people will be making content regarding reparations. Let the Africans know, look, we want to come, but we can't because the government owes us our shit. We understand that because it's normal, for whatever reason, maybe you guys, for example, like in Nigeria now, like the Niger Delta, south, that's where most of the oil is. The land got destroyed and whatever. So the government set up a commission to basically fix them. Unfortunately, their own people are busy plundering the money, but that's another conversation. So if Africans understand, look, for instance, Boshe is in Uganda. If he got his reparations, he would be the next, I don't know, Steve Harvey or something like that. When many of them understand that, they start seeing that, oh, so you mean these assholes among our people that, look down on us when they come because now they talk with a foreign accent. They're the ones sabotaging you. And if you guys could have come here, all of us could have eaten. Then they, we'll start checking out the, the Africans among us, because what they do is they're the ones basically talking from both sides of their
With
mouth.
with regard to the reparations issue, peace to the chat.
Sorry.
What's going on?
How y'all doing, brothers? With regard to the reparations issue, what I think we're failing to comprehend and on a very specific level is that it's a lawful or legal issue. Very little bit can be accomplished with regard to politics and or culture. And please, and this is notwithstanding the input of the panel, because absolutely I listen and I'm still learning. But the lawful and legal ramifications and applications with regard to 13th and 14th Amendment of the Constitution is what gives the reparations movement its power. We need to focus on the legal or lawful aspects of it and use those. I'm sorry if I detracted from the conversation. That wasn't my intention, but I just saw that pinpoint and I wanted to touch on that, because Black, Negro, color are color of law terms. They're not specific to lawful and or legal, what we call legal remedy in law. And I think that's one of the reasons our movement has gotten sidetracked with regard to the topic of reparations.
Well, we're not talking about reparations. We're trying to tie that into how it relates to Pan Africanism, you know, whether it's a valid strategy now and in what ways can we adopt it in a way that's in our self-interest, and even pose the question, is it in our self-interest anymore? And so far, it's been yes. You know, it should be in our interest. Are people doing that? No. And there's a lot of lines of interception that are going on to really block that up, both here and on the continent. And it's like comparing a situation where water is the common denominator with the problem, but folks are dying because of thirst, and then folks are drowning. You know, we've got both of these things happening at the same time, with water being the common denominator. But when you get into the mode of problem solving, you have to ask, what process do I need to take to fix the issue? And we have different solutions or different approaches that need to be done to solve this issue.
Beautifully put.
Hold on, let me chime in really quickly. I think BGS hit the nail on the head, and I think the nameless protagonist is also hitting the nail on the head. And I think Marcus is also hitting the nail on the head with this. At the end of the day, this is a rough process. It's not a process that takes place easily and quickly. I mean, you have to think, 50 years ago, 60, 70 years ago, a lot of countries in Africa were still mired in the colonial condition. And colonial conditioning does not just remove itself overnight. It takes generations for that to occur. And all the while, you still have global political players doing the best they can to play puppet master in the context of Africa. Now, there will always be detractors. There will always be opportunists. There will always be people who are trying to cash in on their own self-interest. These are things that are going to happen. But as Marcus Garvey once said, what any group of men have done, another group of men can do. It is possible to be done. Will it be difficult to be done? Yes, it will be difficult. But I can say that at the current moment, Pan Africanism is going to take place whether Black people from America decide to participate in it or not.
Right.
It's going to happen, whether we are willing participants in the process or not. My viewpoint is, as it pertains to reparations, it sounds great. I'm licking my chops like somebody who would win the lottery. I'm rubbing my hands together like, ooh, what could I do with that bread? What could I do with some money to actually not have oppression be the paramount, factor of my existence? But knowing that as a mode of practicality, that your enemy typically doesn't give you a hand up, usually kicks you when you're down. I don't see it happening. So what can we do to collaborate and cooperate and to help develop Africa and be a critical catalyst for being able to undertake the process by which to expedite the Pan-Africanist goal? Now, I can't tell you that I don't have all the answers to these questions, But you know, I'm trying to be a glass half full as opposed to a glass half empty kind of guy here.
I would tell you it's already happening. The thing is that, you know what? One thing I hate about the internet is everybody expects things to happen at internet speed. Okay.
Yes.
And thing is, you know, this current process we call in Pan Africanism, even with the Chinese, man, that didn't start till like 2005, 2003, man. So we're talking about 17 years, man, in Pan Africanism, even with the Chinese, man. Somebody's looking to the feed.
Yeah, man, Friday, turn off the main feed, bro.
We're talking about 7. The thing is, this is a 100-year process. Okay. If you look at the timing of how civilizations rotate, okay, the Chinese really just got into power. We talk about really 1995 when they actually assert their dominance, right? We talk about 25 years ago. That's nothing. You know, it took the Europeans like 300 or 400 years to get to the place where they actually dominated the world. They didn't do that overnight. They didn't just hit a switch and all of a sudden we're just going to go conquer the world. It didn't happen that way. It was a whole long entire process. And we look at the last 100 years as if they've always done it. No, they haven't. You know, the Chinese started their process in 1850 with Wei Yun. Okay, this is the long process. The Africans are just starting this process. Are the African Americans involved in it? They've been involved in it for a very long time. We look at South Africa. We help the black students, and I'm sure you're part of this, Gigi. You guys help help push the American universities to actually defund South Africa, to actually force them to actually come to the table and give those brothers their equity. Okay, that stuff cannot be forgotten. Okay.
Exactly. So I mean, you know, the American liberation movement, and also the immigrants or the the people from the black people from the Caribbean helped to initiate the process of Pan Africanism as an ideal. So they are indebted to us. They are indebted to us. Now, there's going to be growing pains with this process, but I do believe the fate that all people of African descent throughout the world is interconnected with all other African people throughout the world. That's just my opinion. Now, I mean, we can sit here and settle into America and come to the conclusion that I don't want to have to do anything related to having to deal with these people who are foreign to me culturally. And yes, we are foreigners to them culturally. But the funny thing about culture in the 21st century is that culture is slowly, well, no, not even slowly, rapidly becoming homogenized through the proliferation of technology. Africans across the continent can see and come and chime in to the conversations that we're having here in America. Global capitalism is a hell of a thing, man. And so, go ahead.
I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm just saying that's the paradigm shift. But brother, please continue your point because I can come in later.
So, increasingly, nations, continents are becoming interdependent and interconnected in inextricable ways. Indelibly, Africa is going to come to the fore at some point. Now, is Europe going to try to check it? Of course they are. They don't want to lose their hegemony.
Actually, Green Gorilla, they're not. Okay, we could talk about that another time. But basically, Soros, and even if you look at the French president, the speech that he gave maybe sometime last year, basically the handwriting's already on the wall. There's things that you can do, and there's things you cannot. You cannot stop history.
Right. So
they already know.
The inevitability of Africa's rise. I mean, like the collaboration with China. Like, why would the Africans only choose one group of people from one geographical location to cooperate and collaborate with in order to get their own infrastructure up and running? If they have resources and they can trade them for infrastructure, that's their prerogative.
Okay, that is, if I can just intercede, Professor, not to take over your class. that is the you got to remember, people plus infrastructure equals power, right?
Correct.
Where is Europe? Where is the closest rival to Europe? Closest rival to Europe is right across the Mediterranean. Would you give your closest rival a leg up on you?
I don't think you should.
You shouldn't. So in other words, America and the Europeans kept, and I think was it not Rodney Coleman, Sir Walter Rodney said this, right? The how they underdeveloped Africa, right? Purposely, which in his face doesn't make sense. Why would you hopscotch all over the globe and develop other places and not develop the place that's closest to you? Because that's your rival, right? So why does it take a particular rival civilization, a society that's furthest away from you to help develop you? Because they're the only game in town. That's why.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
But my only argument is that in a world where technology is closing the gaps of distance, not only culturally, but even geographically. Let's not forget, we have airplanes now. We have high-speed rail now. We have ways to travel that we haven't had. I mean, you have to think about the emergence of these technologies and how they're creating global interdependence. Africa can't be left out. It can be left out if you want to, but that's where the resources are. And this group of human beings will not just lay down and allow themselves to be subjugated. Nowhere on the planet does this happen.
Yeah.
You might keep them down for a while, but you can't keep them down forever.
That's true. And we probably going to have an independent conversation, Doctor, about this. 'Cause I've been working on this, man, for like 25 years. Yeah, at least.
You know what? Let's dedicate ourselves to doing that next week if you don't.
Okay. Well, I don't know whether you wanted public or private, but we can have a conversation.
I think that's good to lay that out, because I don't think we have an opportunity to really give ourselves a lot of updated information to see how the meta, so to speak, has changed with the introduction of the internet and how they're developing independently and what that means for how we can interject into
it's the Africa's development. If I could take just a couple of minutes, is a happenstance, right? Is because we have a rivalry between the upcoming power, which Carol quickly predicted was Asia, or China in particular, in the West. And of course, the West doesn't want to give up power to a rival, which the panel for New American Century actually pointed out, that you wanted to suppress a rival, which is the Chinese, and in conjunction with the Russians, you want to check them and keep them from rising. So you try to lock them out from resources. The only other available resources on the continent of Africa. So the thing is, Africans are not going to give it to you for free. You got to cut them a deal, and a big one. So the Chinese cut them a deal, because Chinese want to rise. They want to take their place, their rightful place in what they think they're owed. And so Africa got that deal. But the thing is, the risk is once you put a civilization like Africa on the on-ramp to development, it can't be stopped. Okay, they're going to actually put them into the cycle. So the Chinese would have to take a risk of Africa developing and eventually dominating the planet. So that's the risk that they had to take, but that's the only card they had left to play. So, but we can actually get further into it, because, like I said, I've given you the bullet points. I'm sure the professor probably wants way more details than I'm giving here, but that's just the broad strokes. This is what's happening. This is why it's happening, and they're on the on-ramp. And once they're on the on-ramp, okay, they're on the on-ramp to the freeway. Once they get on the freeway, you can't stop them, okay? So especially if you have a demographic decline all over the world, except that place, okay? Then remember I was telling you about the B cycle, Professor?
Yes, I remember that. In terms of population growth.
Once you give them infrastructure, they can keep people alive. They become the B cycle. What happens when you hit a B cycle? That's when you rise to power and you start to dominate. And Europe is in their D cycle, which is the decline phase. Guess who's going to be the odd man out? It's not going to be the United States, because they have oceans. They're right across from the Mediterranean. Who's the odd man out?
You tell me, Europe?
Europe, and they know it. can't be stopped. But we can have that discussion, man. I probably need to send you some more information so you can actually look at it.
But we also have to be mindful of the fact, and thank you very much, Lady Dandles. Thank you very much for the contribution. We also have to keep in mind that one of the reasons why Europe rose to prominence so rapidly was because of their colonial and their slave-based projects.
Yes.
This was not natural.
No.
This was something that came about by means of pure savagery.
Opportunity, you know, they were opportunists. Yeah.
But in that,
a lot of luck, a lot of opportunity, and if you, like I said, if you actually look at tragedy and hope, luck. So a lot of luck because you had a lot of declining, what we quickly call civilizations. They were on their decline, and basically Europe was on their B cycle or on their upswing. So basically, it was, if you look at the patterns or how things flow, they were supposed to rise.
Berlin Conference, that's the name we were talking about. The
Berlin Conference,
1892 or 93, somewhere around there. We sat down and carved it out. But it was the Industrial Revolution that was really pushing those needs for resources.
Of course, resources.
It's emphasizing what the professor's talking about. And what I'm saying is this looks like in the wake of the automation era, the same kind of deal potentially happening at the end of the day, which is why, you know, when you've got this gap of transition, why business will change, because the conversation has been going on for a long time without including Africa as a presence, as a power play at the table. Everyone's getting their cut without Africa present.
You need. Okay, I think if I can remember, I have to go back and look at my notes. You need basically four things, right? Okay, you need people, you need resources, you need infrastructure, you need technology. Okay.
Land, labor, capital.
Yep. So basically, those are the four things, right? In the Industrial Revolution, what did Europe had? They had the resources that they had technology, they had the B cycle, which is people. Okay. So those four things, which is why they try to squash tragedy and hope, because it gave you the formula. Okay. Right. That's why I showed you the B cycle of all these different societies and how they rose after they hit that B cycle. If the thing is, you can't hit the exploitation cycle, which is part of the Mouse Utopia, the seed cycle, right? The explosive or the exploitive cycle, unless you get a rise in population. But you can't get a rise in population unless you can keep these people alive. That takes infrastructure,
right?
Which is why Africa is not yet in this explosive or exploitive phase, because they don't have the infrastructure to keep people alive. They have a high birth rate, high fertility rate, but a high death rate. Once you start keeping these people alive, you're going to have all these people. If you can educate them, give them infrastructure, and keep them alive, and give them technology, you're going to have an issue.
Well, look at India. India is a classic example of that recently, right?
Yeah. Well, India has a problem. Okay, we're not going to turn this into this kind
of
detail. Okay, India has a problem is because India is only giving them. India's cheap. They want to put the infrastructure throughout the whole country. Okay, and so that's how come their population is relatively stagnant. India has almost looks like Africa, if you actually want to be honest. You have big fancy cities here and there, but for the most part, the country is actually rural and actually destitute. So they're actually pretty even. But even though India has been on the freeway a long time, they haven't exploited it.
Gotcha.
Africa has the opportunity to exploit it. Go ahead.
What I want.
Who's first? Go ahead, Professor. You first.
Well, I'm sorry, but
it's your channel. It's your class.
I don't want to. I'm Democratic, man, so I don't feel like I should just hog everything.
It's your class.
But this is what I will say: the uniqueness of Africa is different than that of China and India, insofar as the tribalism is more pronounced in Africa than it is anywhere else in the world. You got different. I mean, I think that Africa has the most languages of any continent in the world. You have more tribes in Africa than you have elsewhere in the world. You have, colonization, which was more pronounced in Africa than in any other continent in the
True.
world.
True.
So how do you take this heterogeneous population?
Mm-hmm.
Now it can end up being a strength as opposed to a weakness if it's played right.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's still going to be difficult. But I mean, and especially since Europe went in there and carved geographical spaces off artificially and created these factions and divisions and this balkanization there. Now, I don't know. Look, that's something for Africans to overcome.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we can't. Yeah, go ahead.
I think if you look at it, if you really follow it, just look at the last 15 years. Most of this stuff has been squashed. Where it used to go to fighting and wars and killing people, most of this stuff has been squashed at the negotiation table before it ever got going. About immigrants coming in, money being passed, because you have two. Now you have two, basically two. One big. Was it monetary fund in West Africa, right, where they're kicking out the French and actually replacing it with the I think it was ECOWAS, the West African currency as a coin. So money and infrastructure will actually do a lot of that stuff for you. Will actually bring people together, because if you give people better lives, they have less interest in fighting. That's just my opinion. But go ahead.
Yeah. So regarding the whole tribalism thing, what happened in Africa was, during the end of colonialism, of course, the colonizers just did what they did, but the baby boomer generation, so they had two options. One, continue to fight among themselves, or try to make peace. And since then on, intertribal marriages keep on happening. For example, now you find, I'll use Nigeria for example. For instance, the northern part, like 19 states out of 36.
Speak up, Believer.
Sorry, I said, like, for instance, now from the baby boomer generation down till our time, more intertribal marriages happen. So you find, for instance, now let's say the northern part of the country, like 19 out of 36 states. So Hausa people, yeah, you can say they're the largest minority group. So many of us speak the language, but it's not our own language, and we speak English. So, and we might not even like the other person, but we kind of get along. So because of a lot of tribes now, you can't even tell who is who anymore because they're so mixed in. And it's like BJ said, if you give people food, they don't have time to be fighting. And that's exactly what's happening now. So even rival tribes, that used to hate each other, you rather give somebody from the other part of the country that you guys typically have beef with, because he knows he's not gonna fuck up, because he knows you're expecting him to mess up. It's no different from saying, like, a British, an English person hires an Irishman. He knows the English guy is just waiting for him to fuck up, so he'll behave himself and do the job well. So I think the tribalism thing is just classism now. Even within the same tribe, the elites are still douchebags, and then the very poor are thinking that if we have one over them, fuck them. They owe us anyway. So now it's more classism than tribalism.
Yes. So, Marcus, I noticed you haven't chimed in for quite a bit of time. Do you have anything to say about this, brother?
Get this work, Marcus.
Yeah, I missed that. But I agree with the man what he just spoke, man. Like I said, this, I mean, we have division here, right? Based on what state you're from, what coast you're from, what crew you hang with, all of that stuff. I think it would be unrealistic to think that that is going to be, or we are going to be received on that end without some type of resistance from people who feel that way, for whatever box they want to put us in, whether it be an American box or the upper class box or the whatever box. Oh, one more thing. There's something I wanted to say earlier. And like I said, the whole thing with the reparations argument. Like I said, it's to me it's indicative, not just reparations but other things too. It's indicative of the way that we're being viewed by a lot of people on the continent. And one thing I wanted to speak on, Gigi, is Liberia.
Okay.
Okay, so then I'll start then. I thought you were gonna jump right in. Now you seen the video I sent you, and this video I sent you basically, you know, they're talking about I guess the fight between Americo, you know, Liberians and, you know, native Liberians. You know, it's kind of like what I was saying yesterday when I was basically saying, you know, us coming into, you know, whatever African country, it's like BGS said, we got to come in as immigrants. And, you know, you know, we going back and forth about, you know, picking up power and things like that. I think that, you know, people can move to Africa, live in Africa, exist in Africa. I don't know if that counts as Pan Africanism or not, or what me and you were discussing yesterday, you know, going over there for an agenda, you know, power, et cetera, et cetera. I think that that's much more to ask. And I think we have examples that say that that's kind of more so far-fetched than just, again, moving there and existing there as a black person on a continent full of black people.
Well, let me say this in response to that, okay? Mm-hmm. So I think that the primary problem related to Americo-Liberians was that they came there with a settler colonial mindset. And they weren't Pan-African. They were settler colonial. And I think that, you know, like Africans shouldn't accept any settler colonials. I mean, they just threw off the yoke of colonialism. So my view is, if you don't have anything to contribute in relation to resources, education, skills, you're really useless to Africa. But they are waiting on us because they know that we have education and resources, not resources in terms of monetary resources, but resources in relation to intellectual and cultural capital that they don't have, that they can utilize.
Yeah.
And they're asking for us, many, particularly Ghana. I can't speak to all of the other nations.
They all are. Yeah.
But they're looking for our cultural and intellectual capital in order to help them with their infrastructural conditions. And I've been part, like I told you before, I've been part of conferences where I've been dealing with Native Africans from all over, man, Kenya, Nigeria, Lagos. I mean, you know, different places and cities and capitals. I mean, I've been dealing with, you know, these people, and they are seeking to answer. They're asking questions about how to develop infrastructure, how to develop leadership models, how to create a condition in which the most poor and impoverished people can have a standard of living that, you know, because even though you know, capitalism might be a goal, too much neoliberal capitalism creates too much inequity, and then the underclass or the middle class never gets off the ground, so capitalism never gets off the ground. So, I mean, it's a whole host of issues. They're dealing with education, they're dealing with diasporic issues, but they want to utilize our capital. They perceive us as culturally different, but still having in common a fixation of a racial label, right? And they feel as if we're in a quagmire that we have to utilize mutual self-interest to eradicate. Now, I mean, but again, what I suggest is not to go over there seeking power in terms of we're going to set up some sort of, you know, dummy dictatorships like, you know, the Banana Republic or something like that. That's absurd. What I'm saying is our power relies in mutual advantage that we can give to the people from the continent and to the Caribbean. And I think that our fate, our futurity is connected to the fate of Africa. I mean, if right now, you know, the popular opinion of Black people throughout the globe is that, you know, even in Africa, right, throughout the Caribbean, that we're lazy, no good, uncivilized savages. That applies to all Black people everywhere at all times. It doesn't stop because you're from Africa. It doesn't stop because you're from the Caribbean. It doesn't stop because you're from the UK or the ADOS. That just applies as a blanket ontological feature of our existence related to white supremacy the globe over. So my goal is that, you know, like, look, we need to counterman that. As a matter of practicality, this is not something that I'm talking about. It's a self-interest thing. It's not. It has nothing to do with normativity in the sense of this is something we ought to do. If you don't want to be subjected to white supremacy forever, then you band with people in the same condition that you're in related to that aspect in order to overcome it. Now that's just, we're reaching the point where we're at 2-hour mark anyway, so we're going to have to begin to close up.
I understand what you're saying, but you're presenting white supremacy as the only issue that we deal with as Black Americans. And another thing else outside of that is, again, like I said yesterday, I mean, we have a lot of issues amongst each other. When I say we, I mean Black people, regardless of what nation you're from, what ethnicity you claim to be on, or even class differences. We were speaking about issues that Black Americans have within this country, but the same issues happen overseas. The same issues happen in the Caribbean. The same issues happen on the continent. There's no happy unity of Black people in most places.
Let me just say this. Mm-hmm. What I'm not calling for is a romantic and an idealized interconnection with people from Africa. I'm not quixotic. I'm a pragmatist. Look, Europeans, and let's keep it real. When I went to high school, all I learned about was the period from, the medieval, period on the way up to the colonial period. White boys killed each other savagely and viciously for how long? I'm talking about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. Okay? There's always going to be internecine disagreements. I mean, you can't have perfect agreement within your own family. This is not what I'm asking for. But if we can create systems that, for the most part, enable us to thrive and to function and flourish intercontinentally. That's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking to solve every problem that we have.
No,
that's impossible to do.
I understand.
But if Europe can come to terms, to agreements on certain issues, so can Africans.
But there's a difference between what you're saying and what this is. If you say France and England can meet and get along in Europe, you're not asking French people to move to England for it to happen and share the resources there. There's a difference between what we're dealing with and what you're presenting as the same. See, you understand what I'm saying? England and France are two different nations that exist on two different bodies of land. Well, same body of land, but across the border from each other. Mm-hmm. And with Pan Africanism, what basically we're dealing with is similar to what this state of Israel is. You understand what I'm saying?
Explain that.
In other words, basically, you're saying that Black Americans should exist in the same space as Native Africans and share those resources as Native Africans. And you're saying that you're not asking for a romanticized, relationship, but you kind of are for this thing that we're talking about to exist, where you don't have people. Where you don't have people coming from North America to Africa, and dealing with resistance from the natives there.
What I'm saying is, okay, if you have a country or a group of countries, why would you allow 20 million people that want to remain a separate nation to come into your midst?
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is even to mix in, whether it be, because we go through that here.
Oh, okay. Let me do some bean counting, okay, for you, and why this makes sense and why they're asking for you, right? Let's do some bean counting to get what does it cost the United States to actually raise a child to actually exist in this population in this society from 0 to 18?
You're asking me? I'm sure you have that information.
Okay.
So
$1.5 million.
$200,000. Okay, that's just what the government pays, right? To educate you and make you so that you can actually function in this modern society, right? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The government has to pay that. Okay, so if you're Ghana or you're Nigeria or you're Kenya or South Africa, right? Is it easier to import them, or where somebody else has foot the bill, or is it easier to actually teach them from the ground up? What makes more sense?
You have to be specific. You talking about children? So in other words,
in other words, children in this modern society, children aren't worth very much until they get past 18 years old to become adults, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, somebody has to bear that cost, right?
Yeah.
And it's usually the government with the government where you are raised in, right?
Yeah,
so is it easier to import adults where the cost has already been paid, or is to actually bear the cost yourself? Which is more feasible?
You talking about initially, because I mean, well, two things will happen if people go from North America to Africa. If they have children, they'll bring them with them, or they plan to raise children. Correct?
Okay. What I'm saying is, you basically the continent is not importing babies. Okay, they're not importing 40,000 babies. They're importing adults, right?
Yeah, they are
functional adults with skills and education and all this stuff is already ready to go, right? Those are the costs that have not been bared by the receiving country, right? Those costs don't have to be bared because they're already ready. The products are already rolled off the line, right? Which is the same. If you can actually think of it, why do you think H-1B visas actually exist in the United States? The United States does the same thing. Why do you think they import them?
Well, I mean, if that's implying that only adults are coming. I mean, if they're bringing their own children,
even if they're bringing their own children, okay. Mm-hmm. The thing is, the children aren't, like I said, even if they're bringing their own children, basically they're actually bringing in functional adults that can actually start help educating their own children, because that's also a part of it. The thing is to actually integrate a child into a functional modern first world society. If you haven't grown up in it or you can't supply it, is a heavy burden. Okay, so basically it makes sense what Gigi was saying, is actually bring people over there that are already ready to go, to actually fit in and do the jobs and help build the infrastructure.
Not only that, people have to remember also that they're bringing over, especially in the instance of African Americans, and this is why I keep bringing up the Black Starliner and why literally the government intercepted that. We're bringing over US dollars to developing currencies. Do you think that feedback loop is being missed? Like, it makes so much economic sense. It's not even funny. And it's not so much that everyone going over there is on some, again, Liberia, we finna take over type stuff. Nobody.
I'm not implying that.
I'm just saying, in case people that are listening or in the chat, or whoever listens to this down the line, make that correlation. That's who I'm speaking to also, because it's not just us on the panel.
Yeah.
Speaking to the topic, right? Like,
understood.
People need to understand that there's economic incentive to do that. And people that are over here now are already doing this.
When you say economic incentive to who? Us or them?
Them.
Both.
Yeah, them. Right. Well, we're talking about Black people, or you're talking about the United?
I'm talking about the Africans.
There's lots of different ways. People with education that have already been educated from K through 12, because most Africans don't go past the 6th grade. So you going through high school, and most Black Americans that can get there have had at least 2 years of college. Okay, that right there is worth like $300,000 or $400,000 in American money that Africans would have to bear that cost. They don't have to bear that cost. Number one. Number two, if you can actually take people like me that are retired, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have no impact on your infrastructure as far as needing a job or anything like that. You're bringing basically bringing American dollars for free
because of a pension,
because of pensions and Social Security and stuff like that. That's injected money that has no impact. You don't have to hire them. You don't have to find a job for them. You don't have to educate them. Basically, all you have to do is basically the infrastructure is being built for them because they're actually paying for it. There's lots of ways to do things. But go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, so I was going to say that. Panel. Oh, he's talking.
Yeah, that was Baleri talking.
Okay.
Speak up, Baleri.
Sorry, I wanted to ask the panel if you know the demographics of Malaysia. So basically, Malaysia has the Malays, the Chinese, and the Indians. You know, the Chinese basically, since you know how they are, they kind of are like, you know, how will I say, the leaders of economy. So, for instance, now if any of the DOS, whether America or Caribbeans, were to come, they don't have to even bother with any political office. You know, if you're an educator, you're a business person, you run the economy and you employ everybody. It's not like you're gonna be picking this tribe over that tribe. As far as you're concerned, we're all one big Negro. And the locals will even love that. They can continue being the face of the politics or whatever if they want. And also, African countries need to be part of the reparations, and it can start by saying any contract, small or big, if they're gonna give any outsider, you guys get the first pick.
There we go.
At least that's
Exactly, acting as the middleman.
Yeah.
Look,
But
here's
but white people.
are you implying that it sounded to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that I mean we'll have kind of an advantage there, like white people have here,
Yes.
because of our money.
Yeah.
There's a
Okay,
preference.
so doesn't that create some sort of you know, some sort of issue with the natives there? It sounds like Liberia all over again,
So
even if it's not on purpose.
Somebody
if you're gonna work with the elites, they don't care.
Somebody has to develop it. Who do you want to develop? You want people that look like you, or somebody that doesn't?
No, I understand that part of it, but at the end of the day, like, you know, we're leaning more on like ethnicity and skin color as opposed to nationalism. You have people
in three generations. In 3 generations, would you be able to tell the difference?
You can't. And here's the other thing I just really want to make clear. You've got white people going over right now as we speak, literally building schools in countries, building infrastructures like running water and helping with sewer facilities just off of donation money. And they're getting rights away. And one of the main things you hear these people saying in a lot of these villages is going, look, I wish African Americans did the same thing.
It almost sounds like y'all are saying we need to colonize Africa before.
But that's you're reframing it. You're framing it.
Why does it have to come down? Why does it have to come down that black people are trying to colonize Africa?
No, I'm not saying that. That's what it.
No. What I'm saying is this is literally how business is done. This is how this is done. You can go to any country, anywhere, when you've got someone coming in from the outside, expatriating, it's done in a very similar way. The only difference is the response that the government would have, which is why this is much more difficult to do if one of us decided to go to China, for example. They have strict laws to make sure they get the right of way of the income that's coming in because they understand how that can be regulated, right? But as far as Africa is on a developing stage that it is now, you know, people are already doing that. But the difference is at the end of the day, just like BGS said, when you get 2, 3, 4 generations in, they're already assimilated into the culture.
Yeah.
Period.
That is the key thing.
And look, let me. So why didn't that happen in Liberia where you got?
Because there was already other influences where they were planted there for the purpose of colonization. It's not the same thing. You can't compare what happened with Liberia to what Marcus Garvey wanted to do with the Black Star Liner, or what Malcolm X ended up doing with his league when they went over there to try to appraise to do the same thing. It's not the same thing. You can be animated by a different purpose. The next thing I wanted to really highlight that everyone's forgetting, again, is the fact that American dollars will flip into the way the world banking agreements are set up out there. A lot of the issues have been drawn with this law that you can't do international trade without using the US dollar as currency, which has been a big hang up between Africa having a lot of intercontinental, inter-country trade with each other in ways that were in alignment with what was done pre-African grab, in other words, pre-Berlin Conference. Remember how we talked about how those sovereignty lines were drawn by the Europeans and all of that? That was done so that, again, people couldn't handle trading on an international level equally so that they could, again, get on their feet and get to that stage that BGS was talking about, to where they can manufacture and be independent and then compete in the global scale. African Americans undermine that entire process being there by being able to, again, like BGS was suggesting, taking your retirement population and entrepreneur population and slowly integrating into the society. And whether people want to have that or not, that is what globalism is by definition. It's happening. The difference is, do you want to be blindsided by taking a hit? Let's take it from martial arts. Muay Thai fighters will again take a hit to deliver a bigger one. So do you want to get hit in a place that's going to knock you out, or do you want to take a hit in a way that it's going to mitigate the damage and then posture you to be able to win the fight? This is exactly how that's seen. This is how politics works. This is how economics works when you're dealing with it on a state level and how it breaks down. It's just everyone's been doing this. It's just we've been left out of this conversation because the only way we ever see that is being on the receiving end of somebody else making decisions for us. That's why it's so hard to have a conversation.
I want to ask Marcus a question because he keeps talking about colonization. Have black?
No, I only mentioned it once.
Hold on a second. No, you actually mentioned more than once.
And Liberia, fam. Like, go ahead.
Yeah, in other words, are black people so damaged over here that we think just working with Africans will actually cause us to colonize them? Are we that damaged? We can't work with people like colonize them. Do we have that do we have that little white man in our head that's so dominant that we cannot see that we can't work with people without dominating them?
No, we can work with them. It depends on what their reception is to what we're doing there. That's it's not about our intention. It's about how we're received and what we're doing there.
The people are already there doing it. It's not, as a matter of fact, received. People have been over in Ghana and Nigeria for decades, man. I have people there doing that, starting solar plants and stuff like that right now. We were already doing it. The thing is that we have to do it bigger. The Africans, most African countries have African Americans that have been there for decades, man, doing the exact same thing. And that's how come they want more of them. They don't want the Chinese because the Chinese bring in bringing in their negativity. We still have a lot of cultural similarity between the Africans and us. Okay, it's still there. They know that. They see that when we come there, right? They see that when we come there, we automatically fit in. Okay, not completely, but basically, it's like if you've ever been there, been on the continent, and actually landed there, you feel comfortable after about 3 days. You blend right in. Okay. Chinese can't do that. Europeans can't do that. Indians can't do that. We do that. That's why that's how they want. Why they want us rather than somebody else. Okay.
So instead of seeing yourself as a colonizer, why don't you see it as a city boy going back to your grandparents' house?
Grandparents' house, exactly. But anyway, I'm gonna make that my last word. You're gonna get this work, Marcus.
You know what?
I'm trying to understand where's the disagreement.
The thing is, you keep saying it, colonize. Why it won't work? Because the fact that you think that we're coming over there to colonize, and we can't come over there without trying to colonize people. You keep saying that, man.
No,
here's the thing. So I'm seeing also seeing some comments in the chat. And we're gonna have to wrap this up. I know BGS is about to get out of here, and I'm gonna let everybody speak their piece, and then I'm gonna wrap it up. And before I do that, I want to say this: Pan Africanism is an ideal. It's not dedicated towards the colonization of African people any more than Native Africans are trying to, impose some sort of strictures upon us as being African Americans. Ultimately, this is a mutually advantageous exchange if we open our minds up to it. There's not much for us here, but we do know this place. We know this place. If we can go back and forth, provide services and resources from one place to the next and overcome these tariff and trade hurdles, we'll be one of the most burgeoning people on the planet, man. I'm just telling you, we have to think more open-minded than we have been thinking. We are not having the greatest experiences in the world in this location. We're just not. But we need to be able to think cosmopolitan-like instead of thinking parochial. Men who are men don't think parochially and feel themselves as being tied down to anything. They explore. They go out and they make their stamp on the world, not necessarily by conquering, but by providing resources, even if the resource is education and intellectual know-how. So that's my piece. Marcus, I'm gonna let you say your piece. I'm going down the line from left to right, and then I'm gonna close it up with no value-related comments, and then we're gonna get up out of here.
Okay, I think I'm being misunderstood. I didn't say that our intent would be to colonize. That's not what I said. I was saying that it is possible through the eyes of some people, after you have some sort of, I guess, functioning difference between the natives that exist there and the people that are coming in, basically through financial differences and class differences, that it can be viewed as a colonization of the areas, right? I'm not saying that that's what it is. I said it can. I'm saying it can be, and I don't remember saying this before a few minutes ago, but my point is, I saw that as, the reason for, the historical, attempts at Pan Africanism not working out, civil wars and infighting and things like that, the resistance to, people coming there from outside. If you're living somewhere and then you got a bunch of people coming in and they got all this money and they basically, it doesn't even have to be a real takeover. It could be something that feels like that. It can be something that is interpreted as such. Then you're gonna have a resistance to that. Even if it may, be helping the situation, you might look at it a different way. But the ideal of Pan-Africanism, I agree with. Again, I would love to see it actually work. I think it would be beneficial to both sides. So I agree with those points. And I'm just looking at it from a human behavior aspect. But that's my last word.
Thank you very much, man. Thank you so much for joining me, Marcus, man. Every time we talk, man, it's a joyous occasion, and I appreciate this, man, on the channel. My brother Valeri, could you please grace us with some comments before we close out?
Okay, thanks again, Professor Gigi.
Speak up too, my brother, please.
Sorry, I said thanks again, Dr. Gigi. So basically, I just want to give an instant. So I came, I live in Europe, so after 6 years, I just came home. I got stuck here because of COVID. So some of my homeboys that are into IT, they're trying to work with people. So they're in contact with some British guy, some white guy. I'll send a look. Holla at the the diaspora. Whatever you guys need, instead of contacting some Asian, some white, the diaspora, they have those skills. Let's work with them. If more and more of such things happen, the money will circulate within our kind, So that's basically it. And now, like in the state that I'm in, many of the hotels are owned by Lebanese. Nobody's crying over it. So I think Marcus just needs to come down and see the people won't give a damn who, if you're coming in and you look like me, you're bringing opportunity, or even if it's just we sit down and banter, there's enough land to accommodate us all. So that's just my two piece. And thanks again to Dr. Gigi and the panel and the chat.
Hey, man, thank you so much for joining us, Valeri, man. Your voice, as being a native African, it weighs volumes, man. So thank you so much for joining us today, bro. I appreciate your presence. And the nameless protagonist, my brother, could you please grace us with your opinion before we close out here?
It's no problem, family. Again, I want to iterate. You need to sometimes take a hit so that you can deliver the knockout counter hit. That hit that's incoming is globalism. It's inevitable. It's on the way. It's going to happen whether we engage in it or not. Pan-Africanism is an inevitability because we will be placed into this sphere of that whether we want to or not. The bottom line still stands that the conditions that were interfering with us being able to really make that realized have been changing and adjusting. We can cooperate in an economic, legal, and political fashion in a way that's positive, and African Americans have always been in the best position to make that happen because it follows that whole principle of Sankofa, to go back and retrieve that which you left behind. Everybody understands this. So don't posture it as a way of, following a narrative that we get told a lot that we're nothing more than black colonizers on some Beyonce type stuff. There are so many other ways we can contribute in positive ways to make that realized and simultaneously pursue our own goals as individuals here in the US and abroad. So just expand your mind on that. Really look at globalism and don't get caught up in the graph bar perception of it. Understand it's a Venn diagram. That's all I have to say, family. I hope you guys have a great day.
Well, in the end analysis, black people have a great deal of problems. I'm speaking about ABOS people specifically. We have a great deal of problems going on here in these United States. And, you know, I think a lot of times we get sidetracked and we get preoccupied with thinking that this is our only reality, that this is our determinate reality. And I'm not asking for a mass exodus of Black people to Africa. That's not what I'm asking for. But I'm asking for you to be open-minded enough to know that it's okay to go back to your grandma's house, even if you only stand for a little while. And while you go back to your grandma's house, you're going to go back and see the people in the old neighborhood and confer, sit there like the brother said from Africa right now, Belarity. You're going to sit in your banter and you'll realize how much you have in common and what you may be able to possibly do for one another. You might find that while you're looking for something from these white boys, and you might be waiting for it forever, you might be able to find an opportunity right near and around your grandma's house. So having said all that, I want to thank everybody for coming and participating in the conversation and even participating in the chat. We all have deep and entrenched ideas about this, but I'm so glad that you could come and listen to what we have to say about it. I by no means claim to be an expert. I'm just a man with an opinion and just offering some, some possibilities and potentialities, man. But whatever the case may be, please support the channel if you can. I love each and every one of y'all. And if you don't love me, show some love to yourself. Having said all that, I'm going to close out this session. Again, thanks for joining. Y'all brothers be peaceful. Have a great and a gracious weekend, man. Peace.
Shout out to chat, everybody in here. GG, you know how we do. Shout out to BGS. Peace, pretty much.
Peace, y'all.
Peace.
Thank y'all, man. Thank you.
Peace, fam.